Hello again, I'm Don Canis. I have a lot of new and phenomenal information to present to you here. So if you haven't already viewed my introductory website at subconsciouslifestyles.com, I ask that you do so now. I provided a link at the right-hand side of this page, and by viewing it first, you'll be much more informed, and we can save a lot of time by me not having to repeat this information in person. 600 years ago, the best scientific minds in the world believed that the earth was flat, and they put to death anyone who said otherwise. That long-held scientific dogma was toppled when Christopher Columbus sailed around the world. 15 years ago, a cellular biologist by the name of Bruce Lipton made an astonishing laboratory discovery that has toppled the modern dogma of everything we were taught in the last century about our genes controlling our biology. Dr. Lipton's discovery was that is indeed our beliefs that control our biology and not our genes. Here is an excerpt from his book titled The Biology of Belief. The perception that our lives are controlled by our genes is so fundamental to our civilization that this dogma is incorporated into the most elemental level of a child's education. The genes control life message is continuously repeated through every level of higher education, from grade school up through graduate and medical school. The general public has been conditioned to believe that the human body represents an exquisite, genetically controlled automaton. In support of this belief, we attribute our abilities, and more importantly, our disabilities, to the character of our inherited gene codes. The current mainstream scientific dogma insists that we are recipients of hand-me-down genetic codes that we are apparently unable to change. Consequently, we find ourselves not only victims of our heredity, but powerless with regard to our ability to reprogram our fate. In assuming the role of powerless victim, we may rightfully deny responsibility for our ill health, both physical and mental. Unfortunately, this denial results in a tremendous amount of suffering and disease. So much for the bad news, he writes. The good news is, in fact, we are not victims of our genes. Astonishing advances in physics and cell biology have recently toppled the philosophical underpinnings of conventional biomedicine. A radically new understanding emerging at the cutting edge of cell science recognized that the environment, and more specifically our perception of the environment, directly controls our behavior and the activities of our genes. Since our perceptions may be accurate or inaccurate, we may more appropriately refer to them as beliefs. Beliefs control our biology, not our genes. Dr. Bruce Lipton, PhD, cellular biologist from Stanford University and University of Wisconsin Medical School. So, 600 years ago, despite the evidence provided by Magellan and Christopher Columbus, it still took quite some time for society to accept that the earth was indeed round. And today, we are beginning to make headway with Dr. Lipton's rather profound discoveries. I have been in the healthcare and mental health care field on a professional or volunteer level for almost 30 years. I am well acquainted with addictions of almost every type, and after 30 years, I have come to the inescapable conclusion that we use drugs of many different types, be it alcohol, antidepressants, antipsychotics, or even marijuana or heroin, to try to silence what is really happening in our subconscious minds. I remember when I was young, my teacher had everyone stand up in front of the class and had us tell everyone what we wanted to be when we grow up. And most of us said we wanted to be firemen or policemen, or I want to be just like my mom, or I want to be just like my dad. But I don't remember anybody ever standing up and saying, gee, when I grow up, I want to be bipolar and have psychotic episodes, or when I grow up, I want to be an alcoholic or a drug addict. I think that is the last thing any of us ever wanted for our lives, but it happens to 1 out of every 9 of us, and that number is rapidly rising. So what happens to people? If you saw my previous video, You now know our subconscious mind is 1,000,000 times more powerful than our conscious mind, and we now know it controls most of our very existence. The programs or beliefs that exist now in our adult subconscious minds were developed at a time when we were children, from the age of 0 and conception in the womb to 6 years old. This childhood programming is nature's way of ensuring the survival of our species. But if we also grew up around negative thinking, that can also profoundly impact our adult thinking. If we grew up around statements like, "You'll never amount to much," "Life's a bitch, then you die," "You can't trust anyone, all they care is about themselves," or "Money is the root of all evil," then you may very well be acting out these belief statements in your adult life. Or if you grew up in an environment that included alcohol, drugs, or prescription drugs as a necessary part of dealing with life problems, you may very well, as an adult, be acting out those powerful programs. So now that we have laid the groundwork of what can be done for our problems, how do we do it? About 15 years ago, a psychologist named Rob Williams originated and then introduced a process called Psyche that is also radically changing the way we treat physical and mental health. The term Psyche means psychology and kinesiology, and using it we can determine unhealthy thought programs in the brain and rewrite those programs. The human brain consists of 2 hemispheres which are connected by the corpus callosum, which is in the red part here. It is through this corpus callosum that the 2 lobes of the brain communicate by means of neurons located there. I've heard many people say that they are left brain or right brain. The fact is, the healthiest and most empowering state is to be operating out of both sides of our brains. Why is whole brain thinking so important? One answer lies in the groundbreaking book, The Awakened Mind. Authors C. Maxwell Cade and Nona Coxhead studied the brainwave patterns of more than 3,000 subjects using a sophisticated EEG-type device called a mind mirror, which was developed to measure amplitude, magnitude, and frequency level of both hemispheres of the brain independently and simultaneously. Here is a particularly revealing conclusion from the book. From the aforementioned studies of the brainwave patterns of some 3,000 pupils, as well as swamis, yogis, Zen masters, healers, mediums, and clairvoyants, it has become possible to establish that all the unusual abilities that some people are able to manifest, meaning self-control of pain and healing others, telepathy, etc., are associated with changes in the EEG pattern towards a more bilateral, symmetrical, and integrated form. No better definition of a whole brain state could be articulated. This increased capacity to operate on both sides of the brain equally, producing higher levels of functioning, is the key to thriving during the high-speed changes occurring now and in the future. Once again, author Christopher M. Bache sums up the point. When the brain's hemispheres are phase-locked and work as one, a number of known benefits result, including heightened awareness, improved recall, more self-programming, flexibility, and heightened creativity. In short, super learning. I have included above this video the very definition of the word bipolar. And as you can see, it means to hold 2 opposing thought forms, meaning we can have entirely different thought forms or belief in the left lobe, for example, than the right lobe. This is the very definition of bipolar. However, Psyche provides us with the ability to locate in which hemisphere of our brain these self-defeating beliefs exist, and sometimes they exist in both hemispheres of the brain, and we can rewrite them. By doing so, we develop a new neural pathways for communication in the corpus callosum and thereby achieve a more whole brain state. Some commonly held myths about these changes deserve to be challenged. These myths are firmly ingrained in our culture. They've been unchallenged and accepted as fact by many people for so many years. I don't expect you to let go of them just because I say they're myths. However, I do urge you to test what I am saying and decide for yourself. The Psyche process enables you to break through these myths and go beyond their innate limitations. Myth number 1. If you've had a negative belief for a long time, it will take a long time to change it. Myth number 2. Changing old behaviors and thought patterns is difficult and painful. It's the no pain, no gain myth. Myth number 3. You need to know what caused the problem in order to change it. Put another way, insight into the cause of a problem is necessary to release it. In addition to these myths, other commonly accepted ideas make change more difficult. For example, a popular way of describing a long-held belief is to say it is deep-seated or deeply ingrained. The question is, just how deeply embedded can a belief be in a brain whose average size is only 5 inches wide by 5 inches high and 6 inches long? The real issue is that most of our language reflects the limitations of the conscious mind. What is being implied is that it is difficult to consistently identify the beliefs that are the source of our problems. Until we shift our focus to the subconscious mind and accept the fact that we typically don't need to consciously know what beliefs are causing the problem in order to change them, we will continue to have difficulty making positive changes in our lives. Unlike traditional psychotherapy, with Psych-A, it's not necessary to go through the grueling process of recalling past life trauma, of how or when these sabotaging programs got into our subconscious. On the contrary, all of my clients remark how easy Psych-A is, and many of them say it's even fun. On the right-hand side of the screen, I have again included videos of Rob Williams and Bruce Lipton. I also have a very informative radio interview of Robert Whitaker. He's the author of Anatomy of an Epidemic. In both his book and this radio interview, he makes a splendidly informed and compelling case that our current psychotropic drugs are causing as much harm, if not more so, than good. I would appreciate it very much if you would listen to what Robert has to say before scheduling an appointment.